Gavel's not out there?
Not that I see. Give me a longer need.
The
Are you finding it? Are you
CDBG
finding
board
it?
met here, they probably.
Oh, that's
but-
nice. Mhm.
But I can, oh, look at that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just doing that, so she knows you're started.
I will. I will do that.
Did you unmute us?
I did.
Video?
Yes.
Offered the mayor my head, the
Well,
gavel.
we know that's,
Pat used to use it all the time.
I can vouch for the fact that he's hard-headed.
Well, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm sure it would echo in here too.
Yeah. Coconut.
Oh, this is really fun. Yeah, that's a parks meeting when you got there. That's next week. First. The first, yes, that's what it is.
Want to call the City of Wood Village Budget Committee meeting to order for the proposed budget for 2024-25. This is April 25th, 2025. Let's stand for our pledge of allegiance, please. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will declare a quorum here tonight and Greg, do we have some remote?
Yes, we have Urban Renewal member Victoria Miniweather on remote this evening.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Victoria.
Good evening.
Nice to have you with us.
Thank you. I wish I could be there with you all. I have my 3 little city councilors here at home, so.
All right, that's fine. I will go through roll call. Patricia Smith,
Here.
Lisa Campos Dominguez,
Here.
Mary Clark,
Here.
Steve Zabrowski. And Victoria. Dorothy, thank you, Victoria. And Dorothy is absent and we knew that. Mark Clark,
Here.
Harold Ritz Campus,
Here.
Stanley Dirks. Here. And Chair John Minor for now. All right, our first order of business is to elect a chair for our urban renewal agency budget. So I'll open the floor to nominations and there's also a secretary position. Don't start hiding because the chair will run our urban renewal budget hearing and the secretary will
Sign off on the minutes.
sign the minutes, okay? So not difficult. So with that, I'll open the floor to an election of the chair.
Mayor, I move to nominate Pat Smith as chair of the Urban Renewal.
It's been moved.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded before she has a chance to say anything. So it's moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All right. Nice campaign. Secretary. Nomination for secretary.
I nominate Mary Clark.
I'll second that.
We have nomination for Mary Clark and it's been seconded by her boyfriend sitting up here. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of Mary Clark?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
We have one nay. Mary, thanks for taking that job. Pat, thanks for you.
No, sure,
Leading us.
no
tonight.
problem.
With that, I will turn it over to our chair. Pat?
Okay, we'll open the meeting for the Urban Renewal Agency budget presentation. And the budget officer presentation of the budget.
And I am trying to get it to load. There it goes. Thank you very much, Chair. Members, Budget Committee members, I'm glad we started off with some laughter. Hopefully that continues through this presentation here. We'll talk about the urban renewal budget for 24-25. A couple. Let's move that away. So the district's been in place since, essentially the recession, 2008-9, but didn't really become viable till 2015-16. We were able to do a lot of projects the last several years. We'll recap those. Our total authorized debt limit is $11.5 million, and we did our first plan amendment in 2019. When you look at the performance to date, you can see we didn't recap to the start of the agency, but closer to when the performance started to increase to allow us to do some good works. You can look at the total plan area value, how it's increased. That correlates with, you can really tell with the tax when new developments went on, Riverwood South, Byway, some other smaller ones throughout the urban renewal agency, and then how the values trickled up and are now leveling off. We've touched on this a few times the last couple of years in other presentations, but the impacts of the change property ratio specifically related to the byway. Not picking on the byway, they didn't do anything wrong. This is just one of those anomalies of the state's change property ratio, and how if it went on in 1997 when the change property ratio was first enacted, it would cover about 135 units of the 172 that were actually built. We anticipated it coming online in 2022 when it would actually cover 84 of the units of the built, but it came on in 2023 with a dramatic drop in our change property ratio, where it covers essentially 62 units of the 172 built. And just between those 2 years, we had about a $90,000 anticipated loss in revenue. Again, we've covered this a few times. You'll see the impacts of that, where instead of essentially being very flat in terms of revenues to our expenses, we're dipping into our savings a bit, which is fine for urban renewal agencies. We need to be in debt, have to act in debt, and we certainly have the resource to pay off our debts. Again, this is a future projection of our revenues. This is actually assuming no additional construction or build out. We know that won't be the case. We don't know when we'll get more construction in the urban renewal agency's boundaries, but we know there will be additional improvements, but you can see how it just continues to track up nicely. For the taxing authority, this is called, it's the overlapping tax rate. So it's essentially a larger amount. The city has this rate of $3 and some odd cents. This gets a much larger capture of that frozen, anything over that frozen base value. And so we have the calculation here of the increment times the tax rate, the maximum we can get. And this would be the maximum amount of revenue we could collect. Now, that's not what's in the budget, because we like to allow for uncollectibles, in this case, 6%, which is about, I think for the city is about 6.5. We do about 6 for this one. So we have 628,000 in revenue return. That's 625 for current property tax collections, adding 3 for prior years, because even if they are delinquent, at some point the county gets their money and we get our shares back. So we're over any period of time, we're always made whole. It just may not be in any one given year. So we have a total estimated tax revenue of 628,000 for the upcoming year. Now, how are we going to use that money or invest it? Well, here's our operating budget. And so we have up here is our revenues. The biggest change is interest. Last year, when we put this budget together, interest rates weren't what they are now. And you can see that large increase. We're taking steps to try to keep capturing that. So hopefully that continues for a little bit. And then when you look down to our operating expenses, we've got personnel, materials, and supplies. We'll walk through what's included in that. But the big expense is that debt service payment. So on the details of our personnel expenditures, last year we did a reallocation based on where we've actually been spending our time. So on the old one that had been previously the less few budgets, not necessarily last year's. This is the new split out and new allocation of different staff positions and their time relative to urban renewal agency management projects or promoting it and the relative salary cost of that. For materials and supplies, the big one is our audit. And then for the first time, we've actually put in an operating contingency. So that is new to this year of $3,000. And then a bit of internal service, which covers, again, a bit of the electricity cost of being in this building and things. So the bulk of that is, though, the auditing cost for the agency. Debt service, we actually have down. One of them is a $1.2 million loan from the general fund. That was a 13-year loan with a 4% interest. So the breakdown is $91,000 in principal for almost $29,000 in interest for $120,000 annual payment. The next one is that full faith and credit bond that the city took out that the urban renewal agency is paying back. That was completed in May of 2020. And we have a $500,000 principal and 34 and change interest payment this year. So how does this all look? Again, this graph isn't new. It's how that change property ratio really impacted. So the blue line is our revenues. That big purple one is the debt service. And so you can see how we're dipping into our ending fund balances and savings to capture that difference, which again, for urban renewal agency is just fine. Urban renewal agencies have to operate in debt. And once we pay off this is where the full faith and credit bond debt drops off. You can see there's a nice healthy margin to invest in projects again. And in the budget, we do have resource, we'll get into it. If a project comes up, I'll get in the details of that. We have some for development incentives, and there's also the possibility if a very large project comes up, we can always talk about refinancing, budget amendments, et cetera. But this is how that fund balance looks over the course of the next several years. So again, this is where we have the general fund loan, spend it down to do some stuff, the big full faith and credit bond to do a lot more stuff, and then how we spent that down over the various projects. And now we're spending down fund balance to pay off that debt. And then once we do, it starts ticking back up again. So projects that we've done, we've got the Errata Road fence. We did the old City Hall property, both incentives and utility relocation work. A project that had been slated was the undergrounding on Halsey. That's been removed from consideration. We did finish this wonderful building. Our Halsey Street crosswalks were done. The park restroom, I was hoping to say it's going to be underway in the next few weeks. But as we heard from council on Tuesday, the bids were not favorable. So that'll be more of a next fiscal year project to do the restroom project. But the Gateway Sign project is starting next week. And then down there, that's our latest and greatest and last solar compacting trash can. And that one is on Wood Village Boulevard and Errata, already receiving a lot of compliments on that one. We are.
Next year, that's fine.
So else proposed in the budget. So we do have still that transfer to the general fund for the park restroom. We didn't transfer that yet because the project's no longer anticipated for this current fiscal year. And then you see the additional development for incentives. We have 400,000 in there. There's not a specific project for that, but it does give some room if something does come in for the urban renewal agency to offer some kind of incentive. To put in perspective how big or little $400,000 is, using rough back of envelope numbers, if a development went in and had a market value of 20 million, so a $20 million development, that's a fairly moderate sized development. Under the current change property ratio for a mixed use one, it would go on the tax roll somewhere around, call it 7 million. And the urban renewal agency's development incentive is 25% of the estimated returns to the agency over the life of the agency. In this case, call it 10 years. So on a $20 million project, that incentive would be about $250,000. So you could see 400 should cover anything that would come in. I also want to preface most things of size take some time to come from concept through, their own processes, city processes, land use planning, incentive negotiations, and then to construction. So if something walked in the door tomorrow, it's possible it could be done in the upcoming fiscal year, but most likely, these are 12, 18-month kind of projects, but we still anticipate in case something comes in. So what else can we fund? not much, and we don't have much planned. We're paying off our debt. And that's been planned for the next several years. But again, if something big whiz bang does come in and it's a real project, we can, always come back to the Urban Renewal Board and you as the Urban Renewal Board Budget Committee, and we have those discussions. So we do have some recommendations, and that is to recommend the adoption of the budget and to please authorize collection of 100% of the available resource so we can pay those debts. I know that was a lot of talking in a short amount of time, so I'm happy to pause, answer any questions, go back to any slides.
Any questions? Anybody?
I think just for reference, can we go back to the slide where it shows the urban renewal boundary? So that way,
Absolutely.
Again, we've seen, most of us have seen that slide.
Some a little bit newer, or it's been a while. Yeah. Reference, we're right here in this little square. So a good chunk of Halsey, not so much the single family homes on the south side there, but the whole north side. This is where the byway is now. This has already been redeveloped. So Bottle Drops here, that's that little housing development there. A good chunk of all the residential stuff along Halsey, a bit of 238th. We've got Wood Village Green in here. This is now Riverwood South. And then all of this is the former Greyhound Park track. And so when you think, oh, what about Chipotle or Chick-fil-A, which Chick-fil-A is real, got an email today. That is actually not in the agency's boundaries because at the time, the town center didn't quite meet the parameters of it versus the Greyhound Park did. So in looking again at where potential future redevelopment could occur, we had this little bit here with the Tanny's building. This site here several years ago had a project, but financing fell apart. So at some point, that's just across the street and down a bit, that vacant lot. That will develop probably the next few years. Everything else along Halsey is going to be a little bit trickier, part of a larger project. And then certainly the Greyhound Park is a big question mark. And that's why we haven't included any additional development in those projections, because things are there's no real projects and it's too far out to have an understanding of what those impacts may be.
And this kind of, this northeast corner of that's kind of like where the gazebo is kind of at.
Oh, over here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is the whole park frontage, and that's how we're able to do the restroom project because we're both adding capacity and it's part of the agency. That's why we're able to do that project. Else.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the tax levy?
Here we go.
I move to
Oh,
approve the
budget.
URA budget for fiscal year 2024, 2025 and recommend adoption to the board.
Second,
Second.
motion approved.
You take a vote.
Do we have to take a vote on it too?
You had a motion in a second, and then you call for the vote.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passed.
And just for clarification, Commissioner Miniweather, that was an aye for the approval?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. It was a little bit delayed, so I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we have to approve the tax levy, right?
So
Yeah.
we can have money to
Yeah,
do the budget
because
you just
The tax
recommended.
levy was before the other one. That's why I was a little there. Is there a motion to approve the tax levy?
I move to authorize raising the maximum amount of property taxes to the incremental values in Wood Village Urban Renewal District.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed.
All right, well, thank you very much. You have 11 minutes before our next budget committee meeting. We can't till 6 o'clock because that was the advertised start time. So what I'm going to do on the Zoom is stop sharing, and then I'm just going to pause our video. So again, just in case I muted a little early, just letting people know that maybe watching online or certainly for Victoria, we're muting and stopping the video till 6 o'clock.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to call our City of Wood Village Budget Committee meeting, and this is for the budget for the City of Wood Village. Fiscal year 24-25, and it's April 25th at 6 p.m. And we did open our first meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, so with your indulgence, I will move forward. We will go through the roll call again. That will be, I'll start again. Let's see, I think I'll start with Steve. Here. Steve Zabrowski. Here. Patricia Smith.
Here.
Teresa Campos Dominguez. Mary Clark.
Here.
Victoria Merriweather.
Here.
Thank you. And Stanley Dirks. Here. On the City Council, Dara Tan is absent. Mark Clark.
Here.
Jairo Real Campus, Council President. Here. And the Mayor is here, John Minor. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna open, we do have a quorum, and so I will open this up to an election of officers. We need a chair and a secretary. Nominations for chair.
I nominate Mark Clark.
I second.
Well, it's been moved and seconded. Mark Clark for chair. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Victoria?
Yes, I.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Since nominations are open for secretary. Need somebody?
I nominate Stanley Dirks.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Stanley Dirks perform the duties of the secretary. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, officers, for serving. Turn it over to you, Chair Clark.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Okay, so we have now item number 4, which is the budget officer's presentation of the budget.
We skipped one, it's the shared revenue proposed use hearing where we call for a public hearing of any proposals.
Oh, did I skip one?
Flip over your sheet.
Where is it?
Oh.
Sorry, the city one's on the back side.
There.
Right.
That
Oh,
here.
okay.
Yeah.
Chair calls hearing. If any proposals are to be presented, speakers are allowed 3 to 5 minutes each. So the hearing is open.
You'd rather eat.
Call the hearing.
And we did not receive any written testimony or
No written.
comments.
Okay,
Correct.
so no written, so we'll call the hearing closed. Okay, on that now, is this opening now for the Oregon Shared Renew?
No, now it's the budget officer presentation.
Okay, now is the Oregon, okay. Thank you, Craig.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much, Chair, Mayor, members of the council, and City Budget Committee. We're going to walk through the city's proposed budget for 24-25. And unlike urban renewal, I'll have other guests help present. So you don't just have to hear my lovely voice for the next 4 hours.
Oh.
What?
We have a second?
So just want to make sure you're listening. So what we're going to go through is we're going to walk through the overall budget structure, go through our revenues, expenses, and we'll do this for each fund category, general fund, our enterprise funds. We do our operating budgets versus total budgets. And then as always, our discretionary items are at the end. So the budget officer has some capital and other things built into the budget. We'll point those out throughout the presentation. But again, those discretionary ones that are full budget committee, you really weigh in on those. We do those at the end. And then we just want to note, because of Councilor Rios Campo's involvement with Play East, we do have a couple different motions at the end to separate that out and not have that conflict of interest. So we made some changes last year, which would be this current year's budget. And this is how we have it, where the things that are in the blue dot, this is all related to the packet you received. Blue dots have their own separate narrative section and highlight what it is that we plan to do. The stuff in green are things that are primarily contracted out, and the things in tan are what we here at the city do directly. So a lot of different fund types and fund styles, and that's how we've categorized this lovely packet. And then the presentation is built to follow the packet. So if you brought that with you or otherwise had it memorized, it follows that same structure. So in the fund organization, a couple of things while we have admin finance public works highlighted, those used to be general fund functions as kind of a standalone thing that didn't really fit well. And so last year, this current year's budget, we blew those out and actually put them into functional categories and areas. So while they're still listed here, it's because in the budget document, you have to keep the same budget structure, show up for the previous 3 years. And so in the budget document, you would see them, but they're zeroed out. That is why. So we just wanted to make that note, but this is the fund and structure organization. So let's recap and how did we do in this current fiscal year, which yes, there are still a few months left in it. But what we've done with our community outreach and engagement, we've added a lot to our events and event enhancement. We've also now pivoted and found a real focus point on that fire service and fire service alternatives point that we're going to be rolling out. We've also had great success in our community event grant program. So those are great things in our outreach and engagement. The fire service and alternatives, that is a strong 3-city effort that continues to build and grow and evolve. So we're happy to say that that is working through it and maybe a slim potential to be a 4-city one. So we'll see how things happen in the next several months. For our utilities, we're really happy to say that our SCADA upgrades have been completed, a worthwhile, wonderful investment that really give our operators and management control of the system, better understanding of the usage and operations. Well 3 is going through a full rebuild. There'll be some rollover to that. We're anticipating maybe it won't be fully completed by the end of this year, but a great rehab for that critical piece of infrastructure. We're doing sewer flow monitoring as we speak, and that's part of that trunk line upsizing project. So we better understand the flows going through it, both to design it as well as the way the IGA is written and that the shared cost with City of Fairview. And we got new pumps at Shea Lift Station. So that's a nice humming facility once again. We've got a lot of park enhancements completed, whether it's disc golf, gate, signage. We've also got some grant applications out that you'll see in the upcoming budget to really enhance both this park as well as our potential wetland park. For street maintenance, did a ton of litter and graffiti removal. Details are in your packet. We did our slurry seal. We've also added the smart waste cans throughout, hitting transit stops and other areas of high litter that have really made a big difference. And just a robust code compliance program overall, having hundreds and hundreds of cases, both reported and resolved in a year. And I think the big one for all of your sake is, yes, our budget's on track with revenues and expenses. So no big surprises, no big hiccups. We're doing what we said, and our revenues and expenses are as we hoped. So this slide, I just want to touch quickly on beginning fund balances. This is basically what we start the year with already in the bank. And you can see, so the column on the left is the current year's budget, and this is what was adopted. So it's the budget number to what we're proposing. If you look at sewer really took a hit. That was all those planned projects that we've been doing with sewer. And so those were anticipated, nothing unusual there. Water fund was closing out a few other projects as well. So everything's as it should be, especially with the general fund. It has a nice balance. Our capital sinking fund, again, that's that savings account that we're saving to replace larger things over time. So some revenue features that we want to talk through quickly before we get into the detail. So some ARPA funds, that was the roughly 900,000 received a couple of years ago. We spent some of it, but we've been holding on to funds for 2 projects, the restrooms, which again, we thought would be in this fiscal year. It's going to be next. And then the sewer line design and upsizing project, that's continuing on. So part of why we have some higher revenues and funds is because we're still holding on to those ARPA funds. Interest rates, as we talked in urban renewal, that was great. So we're also, again, trying to plan some instruments to continue that increase. Property tax, again, we touched on this in urban renewal. It's not necessarily a loss, it's a loss from the projections. Property taxes are coming on as anticipated. Business income tax, we're projecting to be flat. We saw a lot of growth over the past couple years, huge unanticipated growth, but now we're projecting some that going flat moving forward. Same with franchise fees, and our utility revenues are increasing. And that's both due to increased usage due to population growth, and for our sewer fund, that 7% increase anticipating that future debt needed to build the trunk line. And we'll see that later on how that manifests in the budget numbers itself. So those are some of the significant features that we have. And here's for the budget in front of you. All operating budgets have revenues in excess of costs, and that's a good thing. And so when we talk about the budget, again, we spend a lot of time on operations, and those are, our regular revenues with our general keeping the lights on, doors open expenses. It doesn't include things like the capital one-time grants, contingencies, and et cetera. So for operating to do our day-to-day, we have more money coming in than we're spending. We have same staffing level overall, 16 positions. We did a bit of another mini reorg compared to last year when we lost our former public works director. We shifted some stuff around to better promote some internal people, keep them interested in new activities and new jobs, and to help their growth. And what it did do, because John was a tier 1 PERS employee, so our PERS rate, that was a nice little add. And we'll see that some funds actually were a little bit, for expenses, a little bit less on personnel. Some were just maybe a little bit more, a little bit on that switcheroo there. For our capital sinking fund, again, our equipment, software, dump truck that you've seen for several years now, or maybe for the first time for some of you. What we've added this year, though, is, SCADA replacement. We did a big investment. We want to make sure we can continue to keep that system going, whether it's 10 years from now with those upgrades or systematic few little pieces here and there as we go along. And then certainly this building, keeping it fresh and clean, not just today, but decades from now. We do have recommended capital that's built into the budget, but again, discretionary items will be reviewed at the end, and we'll talk about those. So again, this is the whole total budget, and total budgets can get a little confusing because you're basically counting dollars multiple times. Seth will talk a little bit about it, how the functions of it, but basically it's when we do transfers, you transfer it as revenue and expense in every fund that you're transferring it to. So that's why we don't spend a lot of time talking about total budget, and we focus a lot on the operating, because that's, again, the day-to-day money coming in and the day-to-day money going out to keep our operations going. But we always want to show the total funds and total budgets. Reserves, contingencies, and ending fund balances. I think I'm going to let Seth hit on that real quick.
Yeah. So this is a comparison of how the fund balances, contingencies and reserves have changed since last year. And one of the things to highlight, the column on the far right, is the percent of operating budget. So that's telling the story of that reserve that we have, how much of that, how large is that compared to our annual operations? So you can see for the general fund, street fund, and water fund, we have a very healthy ending fund balance, almost, in most cases, almost a year's worth of operating expenditures we have banked and not planned to spend at the end of this fiscal year. The sewer fund is lower. This one that historically has struggled, and you'll see that in order to fund the trunk line project, increased utility rates will have to be phased in over a multi-year period.
Now just back to me. So again, when we mentioned we have 16 people, this is actually 15 because our new person starts on Monday to round out our final 16 as utility worker. But everyone here, this is who does the work day in, day out here at City Hall, out in the field. This is how the magic happens. So we just want to take a moment and thank and honor those who do great work. So again, we have total employees, which has been essentially flat. Luckily, the COLA, I'm blanking on it. Thank you. Came in really nice this year, 3.1%. We know several years ago it was increasing dramatically, and hopefully we thought it was just a blip, because we knew if it wasn't, we'd have to have a different conversation, but it's come back down. We did do the one time 6.5 is kind of a true up, and you can kind of see when we look at wages for personnel, it actually kind of tracks what we saw inflation do the last several years. But we're very happy to announce that it's back in line with more traditional levels for that. We can't do the work without our staff. We've done a big reorganization the past budget this current year. And again, we did another mini one this year due to an opportunity with the public works director leaving for a different position. We now have, Erica and Becky taking up different pieces of that role. And we did some other stuff with other staff to again help promote their growth, and also some resiliency internally with our organization. Being somewhat small, when one person leaves, you can have a big hole. And now if we can build in some succession planning and people can do multiple things, we'll just be the better for it. We do have a pay compensation analysis scheduled for the upcoming fiscal year, and that correlates with our union negotiations that will be upcoming. So we do a full pay comp. And of course, we always have our training and staff support to make sure that they're well supported and are learning the best of the best. And, we're innovating and, achieving great value for the community and organization, which we always still have our re-engineering projects and awards where if staff comes up with new, better ways of doing things that saves real money for the organization and community, they get rewarded with a bit of those savings. So it's something we always do encourage, and an opportunity when you get new people, either brand new people or organization or people in new seats, you get different eyes and different perspectives. So along with the people we house here at City Hall, we have about 15 or so employees. You consider employees, but they're contract based, and that's whether it's police, fire, 911, building and planning services. So while we have 15 or 16 in-house, we have about an equal number through contracts with various entities and organizations. Again, this hits at what we're seeing, our insurances. This is for our internal people, not our contracts. We'll get to contracts and those costs in the next couple of slides. Insurance is what it is. It's going up for everybody. It's not terrible. For merit-based compensation for those working through their steps and tiers, we assume about a 6%. And then what we've seen as staff is we hire new staff, they come in at a lower rate. So they have that progression through their steps. And then as they top out, it kind of flattens off. And then as we've seen over the last many years, some people, as we've had staff rotate out, someone who was at the top leaves for another organization, we bring someone at the bottom. So generally it all kind of levels out. Losing our tier one again helped our PERS rate. And what really helped our PERS rate was those side account investments that you all have made the past several years. We've really actually saved, I could see, quite a bit with those additional investments into our buying down our unfunded PERS liability and future liability. So even with all the insurance increases, PERS increases, and staff changes, it's about just a 1% increase in personnel costs and salaries. When we look at personnel as a total percent of operations, you can see we spend a lot on supplies. Am I stepping into your slides? Okay.
Yeah, you're doing great.
We do have a note for our materials and supplies, and that is because this is total budget. A lot of that is Gresham Sewer.
Gresham Sewer and all of our contracted agencies, police. Most cities don't contract the way we do, and personnel is 80% of their budget. The reason why we're a little bit different is those 15 employees that we have on contract for police, fire, 911, dispatch, building services, and wastewater treatment. So that's why our materials and supplies looks a little heavy. And this is when you look at the increase from the prior year, that was the biggest driver, and a lot of those things are baked into those contracts. But we don't really have a choice of what the sheriff's office or Gresham Fire or Gresham Wastewater charges us. They tell us what we're going to pay in a lot of those cases. All right, so this is your entire general fund. This is the big one that takes the most time. We show all of the revenues here, and you can see kind of the year-over-year changes. In total, the general fund was relatively flat, and the reason for that is we happily, if you're a streets fund fan, stopped paying off the loan for Cedar Lane. But it was a great resource for the general fund. And so the street fund was sending about $70,000 a year to the general fund, and we were counting that as revenue. That stops, our last payment is due in June, so there's no more future payments planned, which is why we're showing a slight decrease. If we had pulled that out, we would be showing about a $65,000 increase. For looking at the total budget, what really drives the total budget is the transfers in, the grants, and the beginning fund balance. So the big change this year and why you see a big jump is that grants budget, we had $80,000 last year. In the current year for CDBG, between Metro and CDBG, we are planning on $800,000 worth of grants. And again, those are things we're applying for. And if we get them, we'll spend them. If we don't get them, then we don't make the expenditures. But in order to account for them properly in the budget, we have to put them in as if we're going to get them. The other thing is we move money around. And so this double counts the money, which is why our total budget looks a lot higher than our operating. It's one of the reasons. For example, here you can see that the general fund is going to be sending out $609,000 to the sinking fund and the sewer fund, but it's going to be receiving $327,000 from the Parks STC fund, urban renewal. So this is just trying to show that it's going to show up as an expense in the general fund, and also you're going to see revenues from transfers in the general fund. And so in total, there's going to be about $1.5 million passing around between funds. And again, just to highlight that, that's one of the differences between our operating and total budgets. For our general fund revenues, we have three really big pots of money. We have, for our operating, it's property taxes, franchise fees, and the business income tax. Those make up the lion's share of our revenues. You'll see building permits is pretty big, a pretty big slice of the pie, but that is a restricted revenue. We can't spend that on anything else, and that is a net zero. Any revenue we get in, we assume we're paying to either staff or to the Gresham inspectors on contract. So it's not making or losing any money as far as the budget's concerned. Now, to get from that 2.7 to 7.7, you'll see that we add a bunch of really big slices, which are the beginning fund budget, the grants, and the transfers in /STC. So this pie becomes a much smaller piece when you take those one-time revenues and fund balances. Property tax is our biggest source of revenue. Because of the urban renewal agency taking up a good portion of our city, we've lowered the assumed growth rate because any growth that goes to urban renewal gets captured entirely by urban renewal. So we come up with what we know the county assessor certified. We predict some growth. We have an uncollectible percentage in there. Then we do a calculated total, and that comes out to what our budgeted amount is. And that's what you should see in your documents. That's how we get the money for general fund. How do we spend it? So the lion's share of this comes from public safety. And again, a lot of that is driven by our contracts. I think we're at $550,000 for the sheriff's office, almost $570,000 for fire. And those costs are pretty well fixed for us. You'll see a little drop in parks here for revenues. And again, that's John's saving us money even when he's not here. We would like to thank him for that. And then you'll see, so to go from our operating to our total, there's the big one is parks. There's usually a lot of parks capital. So this is what we spend to maintain. It's around $225,000. When you factor in the capital, it can jump up over $1 million. The other big parts of that, we have a healthy operating contingency, the debt service to pay off the urban renewal bonds, and then again, our fund balance, which is kind of our rainy day fund. We did take a little bit of a hit to our net operating margin in the general fund. That's typical. The long-term trend is that that's going to continue to go down as property tax revenues decrease over time. I shouldn't say decrease, fail to increase as quickly as they should. But again, a big part of this change in our net operating margin was the loss of that street fund revenue. We still have a loan to the Urban Renewal Fund, but that's projected to go out for another 8 years. So that's going to be not going to impact us for quite a while. And here you can really see in terms of operating revenue, it's nothing even comes close to touching public safety for general fund expenses. To go from, and then again, in order to get to what our requirements are, you have to add all of our non-departmental operating contingencies, debt service, unappropriated and fund balance, the ones that you don't see and aren't part of keeping the doors open and the lights on.
And it's back to me. So some general fund capital that's baked into the budget. So this is where we're talking about some of those, especially the parks grants and park projects. So Wetlands Park, we have 942,000. We'll get into the details of what's grant funded and SDC funded. We have a CDBG grant project. So that's here at this park. We kept in the field restoration as a reoccurring item. We've been doing that last several years. That's where they come out and do the top dressing, overseeding, fertilizing. They do that treatment twice a year and then some general fertilizing another 2 times a year. So 4 treatments a year, 2 bigs, 2 smalls is how we talk about it. And then that rollover for the park restroom. So that's where the lion's share of capital comes. And as we talk through this, you'll see how not so much the park restroom, which is urban renewal and ARPA funded, but the bulk of this is Metro money. And we'll get to that. So as a whole, this is just, again, kind of breaking down everything Seth presented in different charts. We like to break it down in multiple ways so you see it. So we have our operating revenues, which you can see there's a little decline, essentially flat, with our operating expenses, which did go up, but we still have a relatively nice margin. I also want to point out these are budgetary margins. And so as you saw, like with the property tax projections, we do that relatively conservatively. We do that with all of our revenues where we project we'll get, on our budget, we know we're going to get more than we budget for. In our expenses, we know we're not going to spend every dollar that we budget for. So when you look at budgets to actuals, on the actuals, we always get a little more and we spend a little less. But even with budget to budget, we still retain a nice operating margin for our general fund. And then when you start adding in all of the stuff that makes up the total budget, you get these big numbers. And what this shows is we do have a balanced budget as required by state budget law. So now to talk about public safety and where the lion's share of the resources go. So we're going to talk about our police and public safety. So if you look at the increases over the past 2 years, we had a large increase last year that wasn't anticipated at last year's budget committee meeting. So we needed to do a supplemental to cover that cost. When you look at that cost, it's 7.4 effective percent. This year from that number, it's a 3% increase. So we had a huge bump up in the last fiscal year, kind of done over a budget and a supplemental. And then now we're starting to get back and we'll call it back to our trend. But looking at over the past 2 years is a 10% increase. Fire actually came in a little less. We're at a 3.1 for the upcoming year. And this is our last year of that agreement with Gresham Fire. And this is the theme that you'll see throughout is that 3-city compact, working through fire and emergency service alternatives and options. As we said, hopefully Gresham will become a partner with that. BOEC, that's a Bureau of Emergency Communications, 911. That had a larger increase that we knew was going to hit at some point, but it has to deal with when they actually bring on new operators and what their actual costs are. We get a percentage of actual costs. And as the council's had several presentations with long wait times and things from BOAC, we knew they were hiring up. We knew we were going to see some of these increases, and now that is being realized. The flip side is wait times have gone down and response rates have gone up. So that's where we're seeing a lot of our public safety increases come, is that law enforcement component and then the BOAC component. And now I got a couple more slides, then we could take a break for pie if everyone wants that, or we could keep chugging along. But just want to touch quickly on the Park System Development Charge Fund. So System Development Charge Funds, just as a quick reminder or refresher, these are things collected at new or significant redevelopment of a parcel. So we have a water, sewer, and park system development charge. Those funds are collected based on a specific methodology through the master plan process, and then which gets translated into a system development charge rate based on the development type, whether it's commercial, residential, multifamily, et cetera. So those projects can only be spent on approved master plan projects that add capacity. So that's whether it's parks capacity, water capacity, sewer capacity. We have a current beginning fund balance of $100,000, earned a bit of interest there. And we're anticipating $100,000 in new SDC revenue in this budget year. And as Seth has said, it's kind of like one of those things where if we don't get it, we're not going to spend it or transfer it, but we like to account for it since we know there will be some things that come in through the next year here. So what you see is we have the beginning fund balance, new revenue, and then a transfer to the general fund, because how we help segregate the funds to make sure they're only expended on qualifying projects. We collect them in one fund and then specifically allocate it out to a specific eligible project. And that's how it's how you see it here. So we've got some potential revenue in, and then the transfer is out for eligible projects. So with this, we're going to pause a minute, see if anyone wants pie, and then we can have Erica talk about Public Works.
Well, let's, check, Mr. Chair, can we go get some pie?
Let's get some pie.
We will deliver the pies to you.
First budget presentation, we let her go after the pie was taken.
While we're eating, we're just like,
We can't answer.
Yeah.
Questions or anything. It'll make great TV though.
Yeah.
Very first time I gave the budget.
And then
Yeah, you know, and
the woman who was mayor then came up to Mark afterwards and goes, Mark, I think you should join Postmaster.
Oh, wow.
And you don't have to eat the whole thing. You can take it
Thank
home.
you.
Okay.
No.
This is yours.
We're gonna open that one.
yes.
Wow,
And we also have a plate.
I know you did.
So where are these?
Okay, I'm gonna go walk around.
I get more plates dirty.
But where? Jerry's, okay.
So
I
let's
don't
put
know
it
what
this
I
way.
ordered.
did so horrible. with my presentation.
Yeah.
Chocolate.
This
Yeah.
was-
Dig in and take.
That-
a
that's-
bite.
that's
It's
what-
a eating chocolate now.
We can share right here. Thank you.
No.
I don't know if I'm gonna eat mine right now, but that doesn't mean.
You should.
You should.
Do we have to tip you and?
That night. I didn't think that I asked. Yeah.
My wife can't eat dairy, but.
That is.
You might as well have pie while you wait.
That was new.
You might as well have pie while you wait.
It was.
Here's a napkin.
So the next year, I was all prepared, right? You know, my church.
Savage, just.
Yeah.
Wrong with you? The police department, it's all my.
Yes.
You know, fire department. gets all- Yeah.
Después
Yeah, they do. Oh, sure.
fueron a agarrar el pastel también.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I ordered.
What was it named?
I gave it to Mark and I kept the chocolate.
Seriously, That's how they did it.
But it doesn't fit.
You're calling us.
So the next year, I'm sitting up there. all-
Greg, I honestly thought this.
I'm asking the mayor
Pastel.
if she would take me, you know, making county laws and everything. And I'm sitting there. going, So finally, there, right?
Es que no sé, vi que estaba tan,
For air conditioning.
que todos querían.
I
Oh,
wasn't
what
prepared.
kind
for
of-
that question. I didn't get a single air
No,
conditioner.
no.
But I did such a bang up job.
I'm not gonna help you.
Well, I'm the only one eating besides a 2-year-old. It's my
And then I
wife.
woke up the city manager and he says, I don't think Mark was ready for that question.
When they're gonna give you money.
Yeah.
That's a great
You're
age.
stealing mine, huh?
For now, it's actually.
That's decent.
Oh, Still hits the teen mark.
I'm excited for it.
Look at that.
She got a,
Oh, they're fun, all right.
Okay, how's it taste?
That was fun.
Hmm.
Where's
Well, you might as well eat a couple
How
of.
to manage
Gotta go for it, yeah.
psychology.
Yeah, I had two girls and two boys,
you got it.
Oh, wow.
a year apart.
I mean.
So I had
Bad
four
agree.
teenagers at one time.
Ouch.
So I have no nerves left in my body.
Not bad. The oldest, so I ended up taking it, making an example out of myself.
Mm.
I feel like I got it. Because I was the oldest, but
Oh, yeah.
whatever, I made it easier for my brothers.
Was an old child.
Any banana flavor, the original one was 1960. Yep.
That,
Banana flavor
flavor.
from the 1960s.
Mm-mm.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my. Mm. Get one.
I'm too nervous.
Still after all these years? Still after all these years?
Every year.
Does that?
Last year.
That's only put on yourself, you know.
No, I know. I get told that every day.
So do you still memorize it?
Not as much as I'd like to.
I wish you'd wave at me sometimes when I go by. 'Cause
Well, by the time, so my back's always to you, and by the time I see you, your back's to me. So I should put like a little mirror in.
Foghorn.
I usually throw the peanuts down around this way, and I'm the one with all the crazy colors, red, blue, purple. Uh-huh.
Thanks for advice. Good, aren't they?
Yeah.
So it's a tradition that we want to continue to carry on.
Yeah, for those who may be unaware or forgotten where the pie tradition came from, I think it was about, I'll call it 12 years ago, 10 to 12 years ago,
Probably.
in the middle of a budget committee meeting, and it had been pie chart after pie chart. And we've been going probably 2.5 hours. Budget committee actually said enough pie charts, get us some pie. And they like paused the meeting, went into recess.
And we asked
Yeah.
you to go get them.
Was Mark Gunter, Public Works Director at the time, went out and got some pies. And
Wasn't that Pie Day too? You know, the.
it might have been, that would have been March, and
uh,
but it might have been, anyway, yeah, the committee said no more meeting until we get pie. Decided to preemptively bring pie. And so it looks like everyone's back. So if it's okay, we can continue. And please continue to eat and get more. And
You bet.
And thank you for the pies.
it is absolutely our pleasure. Thank you for your service this evening.
And the meal, that was a good meal.
Yeah.
All right, so here we go on to Public Works, General Fund. So first, we're going to talk about the Parks General Fund. Parks covers Donald Rob, and then all of the general cleanup around the city. As you can see, the personnel have dropped a little bit this year, and that's, as Seth and Greg have already talked about, just the restructuring of all of our positions. Materials and services have gone up a little bit. As you can see in our list, electricity has gone up, playground chip. Oh, that's back there. Okay. Playground chips, leaf drop, and then just miscellaneous supplies that come with parks. And then you can see the one-time 832,000 is showing our budget a lot higher this year. So for our parks capital, all of these have already been talked about, but the field restoration, which is just those 4 treatments on the park that we have every year. And then the wetland project, which 202,500 is coming from the SDCs. And then most of the money for that project will come from Metro grants. And then the CDBG park amenities, which about 80,000 of that would also come from grants to for that project, which will be to put more tables and benches, kind of build out more of our area out in the park, replacing all of the old benches that we have, and then more grills too. And then, as we've talked about, the park restroom, rolling that over. Hopefully, cross our fingers, we'll get that this next coming year. Building services, again, as we've talked about, this is a net zero fund. And this covers the building inspection services, rental property inspection, housing starts, multifamily projects. And like we said, we've heard from Chick-fil-A, so we should hopefully start seeing some building permits from them here soon, which would be nice. So streets and stormwater. So within our streets, we take care of all the street signs around the city, making sure that they're the regulatory signs through the MUTCD, any pavement markings, any bump outs, curb painting, anything like that that we may have throughout the year. A lot of storm water maintenance, such as the catch basin cleaning that we contract through Multnomah County every year around August, the Cedar Lane Storm Vault cleaning that we do, and then all MPDES permitting. The pedestrian and bicycle paths, snow and ice removal treatment, the street sweeping that we also contract through Multnomah County, lights, and then our annual leaf drop, which we have that in streets. The idea is if we can get everything out of everybody's yards, we can keep the streets clean, so then our catch basins are clean and stormwater is flowing. So in this fund, you'll see the beginning balance is $590,000. And the revenues that we get for this fund are through the state gas tax, mainly through the state gas tax and street utility fees, with a little bit from late fees and interest income. And then you'll see the $250,000 for the grants that will be transferred into there. Again, here's some pie charts. So you can see on the left side, basically all of the revenue is strictly from street utility fees and the state gas tax. And then you'll see that the transfers from grants and then the beginning balance kind of fill in that full pie chart. Again, in the street fund, so personnel is a large portion of most of these funds, actually. And the materials and services, we actually have a little bit less from that. Normally we get, you'll see in the next slide, but we put money aside to help take care of Multnomah County right-of-ways. I'll actually just go forward a couple. Multnomah County enhancements, any big projects that may come up. And we're actually, there's $25,000 less from that, that we're actually putting towards the budget this year, so we can take care of things such as 238th Hill, Arata Road, Halsey, those kind of areas that we've seen some lacking services, and we would still like to make sure these areas are beautified for our citizens. And then capital is $440,000, which we'll get into that on what actually fills in that budget. So again, you can see personnel is a large portion of the expenses in the street funds, but our net operating margin is actually hasn't changed much. So for the street capital, we'll have the more RRFB crosswalks, which we have 3 of them on Halsey, by Wood Village Burrito Shop out here in front of City Hall, and then by 240th. So we are looking to put another one on Wood Village Boulevard. So that will be funded through a grant. And then again, we're going to be doing more crack sealing and slurry, and then another year of the CCTV storm line to check out our system. And then, as I already kind of touched on, the Multnomah County enhancements, just making sure that we're taking care of our citizens and making everything look nice. So we're adding 25,000 for that. And that covers the full 440,000 for the street capital. So utility system development charges, which have already been kind of touched. Can see Greg talked about earlier, we're anticipating to get 100,000, which you can see over here, 50,000 for the water SDCs, 50,000 for sewer SDCs. And then these will be transferred into the appropriated funds for water and sewer. And these funds actually assisted in paying for our master plans the last couple of years for the sewer and master plans.
Mr. Chair, can I ask, make a comment really? Would you go back to the other slide, Eric, please?
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is not necessarily the all of it, but certainly what you're hearing, we're hearing here over and over again is the city pursuing grants. And without the grants that we can bring into this city, we wouldn't be doing a lot of the work that is in particular the most obvious to our citizens in the park, along the streets. So again, as I hear the presentation tonight, we are all hearing grants, and they're becoming more and more necessary because our fund is going down due to the change property ratio. And these grants are really important. They don't come without strings attached. And the more grants the staff has, the more time it takes to administer those grants. And they have to administer them, they have to report back. But we do have to rely on those. So my observation over the last few years is that this city pursues those grants as Erica has gone over and Seth has talked about and Greg has talked about these grants. So I appreciate the work that goes along with grants.
And if I could make just a quick clarifying one on the parks grants, those are still in application form. All the Metro ones, we've got applications in, but don't know which one or ones of those will be funded. For the CDBG grant, that 80,000, it was recommended that it be funded, but until the county gets its allocation from the federal government, they can't actually award it, but it was recommended to be awarded. For this crosswalk, that actually has been awarded, and we've got all the agreements in place with ODOT. So that 250 is actually real money. So when we talk about the different grants, some are still in application form, some are recommended. This one's actually a funded one, just to help with the clarifying of those.
Yeah, thanks. The work goes into writing grants. So you got to write grants, you got to be putting them out there. You don't get them all, but that's the work that goes into it. And so we got to cast our bait out there all the time.
And I know, Greg, you've mentioned having a lot of conversation with the county when it comes to like the right of way maintenance and things of that nature. And I do see kind of, again, the anticipation here that staff is saying, well, if they're not going to take care of it, someone's got to take care of it. And so that investment there. Is there any leeway with the county in saying, you know, we can reimburse back some of this, or, you know?
We're continuing to have those conversations with the county on what that looks like, especially around vegetation management. When you look back at the history of county roads, this is more treated more rurally, and we're very much more developed in an urban suburban aesthetic and upkeep. So at the moment, there isn't anything in place, but those conversations are going. In the interim. We do have the 25,000 we can use for contracted services to keep our roads looking nice, plus the 25,000 to accumulate towards maybe some capital or capital inducement. So trying to work it both ways and show that we want to be partners in this, and hopefully we get a better understanding with the county on what we can do. I will say though, the work they did on Sandy Boulevard with the striping and everything. So it may not be a perfect relationship. Yeah. It works both ways and both sides. So.
On to water. So water funds a lot. So we have SCADA, which half SCADA, we have it in water and sewer, but generator testing, valve can maintenance, which can be fixing, replacing, or just exercising the valves to make sure they're functionable. Meter and register replacements, which we're on a replacement plan for all of these. Grounds repair and maintenance, water sample testing, which happens every single month. We have certain testings that happen annually, every 9 years, 3 years. So that falls under there. Fire hydrant maintenance, staff training and CEUs, and just the upkeep of our water reservoirs and wells.
Before you change the slide, you might help. There's several people that are new here.
Yeah.
Can you tell them what SCADA stands for?
Yes. Good thing I wrote it down.
Good thing.
Oh, I thought I did. You know.
It's supervisory controlled and data acquisition. So it's the computer system. If you think of it in a simplistic term, it's a computer system that operates, whether it's our wells, reservoirs, pumps, et cetera, on the sewer side, mostly our lift stations and flow monitoring. So it's the brains behind our system. And one thing that's really neat about our SCADA system is, it can run itself when we monitor it, and it sends alarms and things. If for an unanticipated reason it goes down, we also have the ability to run it manually. So we're not fully reliant on a computer system that could, crash or otherwise something nefarious happen, and we're out of water. So it works both ways, but when it works beautifully like our system is, it's a wonderful tool to see what's pumping where, what's going where, any issues, concerns, pressures, et cetera. So yeah, it's the brains behind the system.
And I'll just add on to that. So if we lose power, so the generator testing, generator maintenance, that also, if we ever lose power, that runs our SCADA system as well as our facilities. So then we can still monitor and look at everything remotely, even though the city's lost power. So. Okay, so in the water fund, the revenues for the water fund, as you can see, are mostly all from water user fees. We do have some from hookups or hydrant fees, late fees, interest income. And then we have the $250,000 from the SCCs that you saw in a previous slide. And so you could see that the change from the last year, we had 44,000 in the operating and then 180,000 in the one time. And for the one time, the transfers in last year were only 10,000. So that's why there's such a large jump in that. And then again, rolling over into the total, making it higher. As you can see in the pie, water user fees are our revenue in the water fund, and then breaking everything down, having our beginning balance, SDCs, and then the water user fees. So for the water fund requirements, personnel is huge. As you can see, it takes people to run the system. And then the materials and services, 200,000, and capital at 315,000. And we'll talk about capital in the next slide or the next couple. Again, some more pie charts, but you can see from these that our net operating margin is very healthy in the water fund. So for the capital and the water system, so we've been doing radio reads for the last 4 years. We've actually, the last couple of years have put about $10,000 into those radio reads. And these radio reads actually connect onto the meters, the water meters that everybody has. And so they give us the capability of doing drive-bys and getting reads off of these meters. And we're putting more into the system because it's becoming more beneficial and cost effective for the city to start looking at an AMI system. And what AMI is automated metering infrastructure. So right now we have a good portion of our meters where we have to walk around and do a touch read or manually read everything. Through an AMI system, it's actually, so you can see it on a computer. You can, has a lot more capabilities. We can track leaks and actually let customers know that there's leaks prior to possibly the customer even knowing that there's a leak. And then leaks within our system and usage, and there's just pressure. There's a lot of extra things that come with it. But before moving to an AMI system, we actually have to implement the radio reads first, because that is what would ping the signal for us to move on to that process. So we're ramping up that and putting more money into that system so we can hopefully in the next 2-3-ish years actually be fully radio read capability so that we can move on to an AMI system. And then this year, we've actually put some more money into our water meters through our replacement plan. So we can make sure that we're replacing meters before they fail or have any issues. We're actually also looking at getting a chlorine analyzer. These go in the well system. We have in each one of our wells, we have one, and then in our booster station, we have one. And this tests the chlorine that is going out into the distribution system. The analyzers that we have right now are going on about 18-20 years. So before those fail on us, we're looking to also start replacing those. And then our well 3 generator, which it's actually become a bigger project than just the generator. We will be getting a generator for well 3 to do as like we said earlier, so the well can run and SCADA can run when the power is out. But we're looking to roll over some of that money so we can finish our rehab on our well and then also get a generator. We're also looking at a water vault at Shea, which this picture to the right, you can see in this little box right here, we have a 4-inch meter that is about 4 feet down in the ground. I could probably change it if one of the guys held my ankles. So we are looking to actually move it all and get everything into an actual vault so we can perform maintenance on this meter and change it out. And then as always, we always have money in for water main breaks just in case. So onto the sewer. So again, we have SCADA, which monitors our sewer, all of our lift stations, which we have 3, and then covers our building and ground maintenance, hotspot and quarterly cleaning, which this is actually, we have some areas in our system that build up within the manhole. Any blockage in our sewer system, we go around and clean those on a regular basis to make sure that our sewer is still flowing. Annual generator maintenance. Again, these generators run the lift stations just like they do the wells and the reservoirs. Sewer lateral repairs, we plan out 2 per year for anybody who has any breaks in their laterals, bellies, root intrusion, anything like that. Our flow door calibration, which is down at our shell flume, which you can see down here at the bottom left. And this is our station, our last station that runs before it goes into Fairview. So this tracks everything from our system before it continues onto our trunk line and then onto Gresham. So, and then the wastewater treatment from Gresham, which is what I was just talking about, which has also been brought up earlier tonight. And there's actually been a 14% increase on our fees from Gresham. So thank you, Gresham. And the sewer funds or our revenues, again, you can see they come from the user fees, which we've raised 7.1% to help with that trunk, the preparation for the trunk line. And then the transfers in for the $650,000, which is actually would be ARPA money again for that trunk line, to pay for the trunk line and design and all of that. There it is. Here you can see our user fees pay for pretty much everything in the sewer. And then again, adding in the transfers from ARPA beginning balance, and the user fees are still a good percentage of that. So personnel, being another high ticket item, again, within our infrastructure, it takes people to run it. And then the materials and services you'll see is pretty high, but again, we just talked, Gresham just upped our rates 14%. So that's why you'll see a huge increase there. And then capital for the trunk line is $930,000. Here you can, again, you can see that our net operating margin is very healthy in the sewer fund. And so some sewer capital projects that we have for this next year is sewer CCTV, which we're looking to carry that over. And this is actually, you can see in the bottom left, it's it'd be for cameraing the whole entire system. So we've actually already started this project and are looking to do the bulk of it in the next fiscal year. So we will be able to see the condition of all of our pipes, be able to mark out all of our laterals and actually have records of those. The records we have at the moment are not the best or the easiest to muddle through and figure out. So we're looking to simplify that. And then we have added money in for sewer access lid sealing, which would help seal manholes to help infiltration. I don't know if you can see, but in this right picture, a little bit of this water pouring through. So we have some areas where we have infiltration in our sewer system. So we'd be looking to seal all of that up. And then of course, our trunk line design.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, and back to me for a minute, but then you get to hear from Seth, So quick couple notes on admin and finance. We heard, some general fund about public safety, the revenue, certainly public works and how busy they are and the big piece of our budget that is. We want to talk quickly. This, used to be thought of as our events fund, but it's definitely bigger than that. Community engagement enhancement. So it has, of course, all of our litany of events, but we've also included the maintenance and acquisition of our flower baskets, the community banners. One thing we also added to this last year was the $10,000 for homeless services and support. And that's everything from helping the Hope team. Maybe they've got some roadblocks getting some funding. We can shorten that up and maybe they just need a gas card or some food things to get on their way to something more successful. Sometimes it's camp cleanup or towing in some cases. So we've added that now to the budget. And so if you look here from last year's adopted, it was 127 and then 141, but we did have a one-time $15,000 that was added to it. We've then operationalized 10,000 of that. So if you look at kind of the total from last year's adopted at 142 to this year's 141, it's essentially a flat budget, inclusive of all these services and support. The other great fun thing that we do is the Play East and supporting Play East Recreation. We fund half of the Play East director with the city of Fairview. So we have a perpetual IJ with them now. That was done last year. That was a great piece with a great program. And so here we have the anticipated next year's cost for that great program.
So when we split up admin and finance, Greg said he was going to take the fun activities. That was going to be given what was left. So we have our general fund support for the pooled internal service fund. You can see that it covers government, general government administration, public works administration, and non-departmental. It's relatively flat. And this is the other part. These are all the gray slices that you've been seeing in the pie charts. Contingencies, the transfers out, which we covered, the debt service for the 2020 bonds, and then the rest is our unappropriated ending fund balance. So the kind of everything else that goes into the general fund that's not operating or fun is going up a bit. That's primarily driven by this increase in transfers out. More exciting than that is our capital sinking fund, where we have been accumulating research. We 2 years ago, we had been accumulating resources in all the operating funds. When we got done using the municipal building fund to build this, we recycled, reduced, and reused that fund to start accumulating resource for this building, but we've been adding things as we've been going on so that we can hopefully pay for things as we go, so that we're not going to get 10 years down the road and have a bunch of nice amenities break and not have a way to fund them because we hadn't been putting money away for them. So what we've been doing is City Hall has a sinking fund that water and sewer are paying into because they didn't contribute to the actual purchase price of this building. We have a backhoe that we've been putting money away for 9 years, a dump truck we've been doing for 6, accounting software we've been doing for 9 years. And then this year we spent money upgrading our SCADA project, and we're going to be putting money away every year in order so that when that next replacement comes up 5, 10, 15 years down the line, we already have the funding accumulated for that. And so in total, in the recommended budget, this would have a fund balance of about $600,000 for replacing all those critical big ticket items that our staff use in order to continue to serve the citizens of Wood Village. We thought we'd also point out that the Internal Service Fund pays for all of our council expenses, which we're very grateful for all of our counselors and volunteers. I'll cover kind of what the components are. So the Internal Service Fund gets split up among our main operating funds, and you can kind of see the general fund takes the largest share, but the utilities also take a pretty big piece of that. And we'll cover all these individually. So the general government, the first one, saw a big drop, but that's because last year the committee approved a community engagement strategy for $50,000, which we've not included in this year's budget. That was a one-time thing. This also plays for our Play East supplemental funding for scholarships, and also these opportunity scholarships the council awards. Covers appreciation dinner or retreat, some council discretionary, and all of the IT support. The admin and finance piece is larger. It covers all of the costs for our audit for our city auditors. Legal counsel, we pay Jeff. We tried getting him showing up for free, but he said no. We have a planner on contract. We have insurance for all of our facilities that is processed through here, computers, as well as the software licensing in order to enable them, and our phone system. We also do some training. This has just kind of a hodgepodge of different office supplies that are pooled together. The largest increases this year we saw a big jump in both of our insurance, audit, and we put some money in for the legislative advocacy for the upcoming long session that's going to kick off next spring. Public Works Admin, this is where we pull all the costs that the utilities share. A lot of this is the software that the utility staff uses, as well as their computers, vehicles. We run all the maintenance and utilities for this building and operations building through here. We pay for our FOG program, which is fats, oils, and greases we have on contract with Gresham, as well as some other miscellaneous expenses. And there was an increase both for some education reimbursement, and it just so happened that we have 2 more computers on our replacement schedule that are exclusive Public Works for this year. So that's where the bulk of the increase came from this year. And finally, our non-departmental, we pay for all of our communications, essentially our internet for all of our sites, for this site, and utilities, water, electricity. We want to be able to flush the toilets when we need to in the building. And then we do cleaning and maintenance. And so one of the big increases and kind of that $12,000 up is the splash pad continues to use more water every year that it's open. So we have to keep adding costs for that. We also saw a big bump in electricity costs for this year. And then some things that we hadn't done before: windows, carpets, pest control, which includes both exterior pests and interior pests.
A lot of pests running around.
Be clarify that these are non-human pests. For any pest removal of another kind.
We have a separate budget for human pests.
Intergovernmental relations, that's what we call that budget.
Oh, government relations.
And then some more, we found that there's some additional ground maintenance that after we got in here, and been in here for a year and a half, some stuff needed freshening up and some work done. So with that, that covers your internal service funds. I'm going to turn it back over to Greg to recap all of what you've seen so far.
Yeah, try to recap over an hour and a couple slides. So there we go. So this is all funds operating. And so again, this is money coming in, money coming out to just do what we're doing. Revenues over here, whether it's for the general fund or our water sewer fund, et cetera. So all of the revenues over here. And then we have all of our operating expenses over here. So what we've seen, we did get an increase in operating revenues, but a lot of that is taken up by increases in operating expenses. But with that, there are operating margins in all the funds as you've seen. This is a recap of all the capital you've seen that's already baked into the budget. And again, we have that wetlands park at 942,000. Again, most of that covered in Metro grant or Metro funding. Our multi-use field restoration, that CDBG project was 80,000 would be CDBG funded, and that park restroom project. As we move to streets, we got the county service enhancements and the Wood Village crossings and our annual slurry and crack sealing treatment. Continuing down that page, we've got those radio read meters. We're upping that to try to wrap up our system here in the next few years. So we could look at additional technology in our water and sewer customers. Some pretty big meter replacements, both in size of the meter and in quantity coming up. Again, that's kind of the cash register of our systems. We want to make sure that the meters are reading appropriately and accurately. We want to know what we got the right amount of chlorine in our system, and wrapping up those well 3 rehabilitation projects. We've got the vault on Shea, so Erica doesn't have to be hung by her ankles to do repairs and maintenance. And then that 40,000, that's just, we have it there in case we need it. We've seen some breaks over the last couple of years. Some of them have been needing quite a bit of funds, but it was one of those, if we don't have any breaks, we don't use it. Wrapping up the televising of our sewer lines, that trunk line design, and then again, sealing up some infiltration areas along our sewer system for a grand total of a lot of money there at the bottom. But again, a good chunk of that is grant funded through those park projects. When we look at, again, now here's our total budget. So that's inclusive of all those transfers, beginning fund balances, ending fund balances. That's how you get from, that's how you get to almost $16 million budget. But again, you can see everything is quite healthy and quite stable. So here's where the magic happens. Yes, please.
Okay, so before we get to discretionary, I should have paused you guys at new points for the new people that are ask if there was any questions as we went through each of the departments, in which we didn't, which I didn't pause to say if there was any questions for Erica or you, Greg, or you, Seth. Are there any questions from Mary or from, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Pat, my name's
Pat, I know. Our other new
New to there.
You don't have any questions. Mary, do you have any questions?
No.
You're doing that well,
And
guy.
I've got,
And of course, I'm sorry. Yes. Oh, Stan, you have questions? I should have realized that. Okay.
Something maybe.
Is your microphone on?
Let me start over again.
Yes, please.
Please do.
Anyway, the comment is that, our utility bills, water and sewer are going up quite a bit for our citizens. And that's one thing I do hear occasionally is why our sewer and water bills are so high. I think we should let it be known to our citizens that part of the reason we're going up so much is because Gresham has whatever discretion they want as far as raising our rates. And this year it's 14%. I think that's important for our citizens to know that we're not, we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
We're spending money correctly, but the big increase is partially because of Gresham's increase.
That's a great point. And I think another point we can add, so starting this summertime, we're doing some open houses and outreach around a potential utility rate restructure, where those who don't use a lot of water may actually have a bit of savings. Those who use more are gonna be paying a bit more under the proposed structure. Not saying it's done yet. And I think those are great points to make, that, a lot of our costs for sewer are fixed and controlled by Gresham. And, there aren't other choices for that. To build their own treatment plant would cost dramatically more than continuing that partnership with Gresham. There's also some other components we can talk about, how we're using a good chunk of all the ARPA funds that we did receive through the CARES Act to fund that sewer build out, where other cities may have used it for revenue replacement and did who knows with it. We were very intentional in that, buying down the cost of that sewer line through other monies will help everybody in keeping rates down as much as we can. So I think the points are well made, and we can do a better job communicating, whether it's through the potential rate change model, as well as just in general communication about where the money goes from their utility bills.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Stan. That was a good point. Also, the fact that just everything is costing more. And Gresham's increases are also probably due to the increases that they've received as well. So this is just a mark of what's happening, worldwide for that matter. But yeah, so I always like to point out the discretionary that each year that we have these come before us is that our staff here always gives us this discretionary. And when they do this, it always fits within our budget. So I always like to point that out as well. It's not something that we have to pick and choose, that is going to be outside of our budget where we do not have the money to afford.
And we built some new slides around that too, based on some comments and questions from previous years of, what is it we can afford, whether it's through current, that margin, the operating margin, is what's coming from savings. So we've developed a couple of slides that get at those questions. Also wanted to see if Victoria had any questions too, since she's online.
Oh, yes, thank you. Victoria, do you have any questions?
I actually don't. The presentation is done very well and easy to follow. So yeah, I don't. You guys did a great job.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So for that discretionary, so here they all are in their, summary. We're going to go through each one of them in an individual slide, but we're also going to walk through, before we do that, what can we afford? But this is how they break down, whether it's the total cost and where they'd be coming in their fund, whether it's a general fund or one of our enterprise funds. I also want to make just a quick note. The playground sinking fund, that'd be a new ad. We're not going to spend that next year. That just goes to that sinking fund account. So, and how much we can afford.
So this is kind of trying to answer that question by looking at our fund balances. So this is the beginning and the ending fund, proposed ending fund balance for all of our major operating funds. You can see there's some spend down, but again, that part of that's because we budget conservative on revenues and higher on expenses. I'll also point out that the big reason why the general fund is dropping is because we're transferring that $600,000 of ARPA funding to the sewer. But the committee ask for each fund is listed here, kind of that summary sheet that was here, kind of by fund. We've now kind of aggregated to show with the beginning and ending fund balances. And I will say, we're asking, with the delay in the park restroom, we thought we were going to break construction on that and spend $150,000 this year. With the delay of that, had we known that when we put this together, the beginning fund balance for the general fund would have had another extra $150,000 in it. So since that money is rolling over from a project that's already been funded with ARPA and URA contributions, it really doesn't impact our operating ask. So if everything was approved, this is kind of what would happen to our ending fund balances in all of the operating funds. So the general fund's the big one, and there are some marginal adds for water and sewer. And then Greg will attempt to explain this another way.
Because again, people look at things differently, whether it's beginning and ending fund balance. Other is what can we forward with the revenues we're getting. So you see on the left, this is that operating margin that we saw in all the funds. This is all the proposed capital that you've seen that's in the budget. This column, this is what's being paid for from grants, SDCs, or a rollover from prior year. So again, that's where you get that 1.5 numbers. Most of that's grants and other components. So this is where we have that remaining margin. So in the general fund, it's 350,000. Streets actually does have a bit of deficit. Again, that's kind of how we split up. We added more to the annual crack and slurry ceiling, as well as the county enhancements, both for potential future capital saving and that 25,000 and actually doing some additional maintenance. But the ask is pretty low. For water, this is what we're left for that remaining margin. Now sewer, again, that's a negative number, but again, that was actually purposefully planned. If we could go back to a different presentation, looking at the sewer rates and kind of going to the point of the increases, we're doing the CPI plus 4% because we're accumulating for that main trunk line and trying to buy down that cost and spread it over time. So the fact that, there's not a margin there actually was anticipated as we're trying to buy down the costs of essentially funding that project. And again, the discretionary ask is real minimal in this fund. So hopefully between the two, whether we're talking about where we're at with the beginning fund balance and where we'd be at with the ending fund balance, and or where is this coming out of, current revenues, here's what that looks like. So we're going to walk through the projects and we're happy to go back to these slides and, we can talk it all out, or that main summary slide. One is a fire service study of $150,000. And what this is a 3-city effort. Wood Village and Troutdale would put in $150,000. This would fund various consultants and services related to exploring those options, whether it's through service models, taxing options, communications plan. It's unlikely any one city would spend 150 in the next year. This is likely we'd spend a chunk, roll over in the following year or two. Looking at this as a multi-year effort, but this is the money starting that process.
Make a comment here, Mr. Chair. This is really an important piece of our budget and related to what Stan Dirks just said about prices going up. The Gresham has informed the 3 cities, not officially yet, but in a public meeting, that our costs could go up for fire to 87% increase. All right. Now, I'm not saying they're going to do that, but that is what they have announced in a city meeting. So what's really important here for the budget committee in my thinking here is that there is going to be a point where we have to figure out how we're going to pay for fire, because that money comes directly out of the general fund here. And it's, hovering close to 600,000, and it's going to keep going up. Now, the more money we have to spend for fire out of our general fund, the less money we have for some of these other items that we've gone over here tonight. So there is going to be some hard discussions that are going to have to occur on our fire and how we deliver fire services in our city. So just keep that in mind as a budget committee member. And we will start, and that 3-city effort to evaluate options is just that, evaluate our options. And then we will, as we evaluate and review them, then the 3 cities will work on a joint plan, but the city of Wood Village will also be working directly with citizens like you, so we can understand that and we can get this information out to it. And I don't want to go into much more depth, but it's an important piece to go away from here with as a budget committee member.
And I believe Troutdale's wrapped up their budget and it is in their budget. Okay, so there it is, 100,000. Fairview indicated that they would find the money, put in 100. So again, it's unlikely we're going to spend 150 next year, but it would kind of just put what's going to be needed in this pot to do this multiple year effort.
Greg,
Yes.
do you feel like we've gone back in time here?
To
Because
2013?
We did
Yes.
the fire years ago and didn't do it.
Yes,
All right?
exactly.
I,
Feel that way too?
I do, Mayor.
Yeah.
yeah,
Anywho, yeah, I
I
think
look a
it's-
little older, but it feels the
and
same.
Now that, we have support from, which we didn't have back then.
The difference is the three cities are very much united in a
Yeah,
path forward.
that
And
That is.
we also have other allies in this process. So it's a very real
Good.
effort
Good.
in just exploring and evaluating those options.
Thanks, Greg.
I have a question.
Please.
What per individual in the city, I mean, our population, how much do we pay for fire protection compared to somebody in Grisham per person? Are we being penalized is what I want to know?
No, so I mean, we pay, I think it's 52,000 this year for fire, in this current budget year for fire. We have 5,000 people. The contract with Gresham goes back to 2015. At that time, they did a true up. It was based on an assessed value proportion, that it was a relative proportion, dollar per thousand of assessed value. Then every year thereafter, it was kind of a very paragraph long formula based on increases in assessed value, discounted with various staffing components or additions to staffing components at Gresham Fire. That's where we get the rate that we have today. At meetings at Gresham, and these are public meetings, they'll say that the three cities are underpaying for the service, and they're looking at that at a per thousand assessed value. We also then counter that with, one, we have no say in how you provide your service, what your contracts are, who your team members are, and frankly, we're a marginal cost to their service as a three city being 40-ish thousand people in total compared to 120,000 people, and what they could cut if we weren't part of that service. They wouldn't save what we contribute as a three city as a whole. So I'm not sure if that fully gets to your question.
Yes, it does.
Okay, wonderful. So I wouldn't say we're overpaying. I say we're underpaying. And that'll be something not really mentioned in this because it's not necessarily a direct budgetary impact, but those negotiations with Gresham, since the contract will be expiring June of the following year, we'll need to do something with them. They also have their May levy that they have asked out. And I think how their voters take a look at that will inform future conversations with Gresham and Gresham.
And there will be more information in the newsletters coming out too. So we'll be able to try to start getting that information out there. So if you have questions when you leave here about that, please make contact with Greg. So you can get really into the weeds a bit with it, but it's pretty simple. We're gonna have to pay more for fire. So we have to begin thinking about that and how we want fire services delivered in our city.
All right, this next one, a little less complicated. It's basically a translation pilot for our newsletter, and this would convert our newsletter fully into Spanish and Russian that would be available on our website. We've got a couple of quotes, and we think for a good translation could be done for about 12,000 for the year. So that would be taking every newsletter that we do, be 6 a year, fully translating them, and then be available on our website using other online tools or some other lesser cost services don't necessarily translate the best. So this is making sure that if we do a translation, it's understandable to that reader in their native language. This is essentially the park restroom rollover, and that we need to add that 150,000 back in to cover what we thought we'd spend this year that we actually aren't, since we're going to rebid the project in the fall time. So we've got an approved plan, a design review plan. We just need someone to build it, and we're going to go out and if you're looking at this picture up here, this isn't what the restroom will look like. That was just a picture we used to develop the concept. But it is 8-stall single-use restrooms, enhanced lighting all around it. Really cool project. Just bids didn't come in like we thought, but we need to include the full project amount moving forward. This is to do a potential community garden. This has come back several times, went to council a couple months ago, said go ahead and put it in the council discretionary. Our current thought is potentially add it to the backside of City Hall. First, we thought maybe here where they are in red. And talking with others who have done gardens and other users of the park, we thought, maybe we could even maybe move this trail further by those new tree plantings and create some barrier and distance from these homes and create a nice garden space that doesn't interfere with, multi-use of the field, walkers, and can actually separate that space. Also not necessarily interfere with their events in this field in conjunction with the City Hall event. So this would add money to essentially build this out, work with partners to create back a community garden. These two items were based on the council annual performance plan of both community conversations as well as a kind of community emergency resiliency plan. For the community conversations, we've added $5,000 that may help bring in subject matter experts, facilitators, and then things that make a meeting pleasant, whether it's food, childcare, things like that. And the idea is to hold facilitated conversations around difficult or hot topics around the community. Maybe it's substance abuse or homeless, maybe around just what our collective culture is. And so this fund would go to help support that effort. The other one on community emergency resiliency is, again, maybe hosting courses or classes. You could think maybe some basic first aid. A decade or better ago, we did what was called CERT, and that's community emergency response training. And that's where basically we're training community members in certain things around disaster preparedness, that then they can help train their neighbors and think about what it means to put together a basic emergency kit. Setting up kind of neighborhood groups. It also could be some funds towards getting supplies such as air conditioning units, and we need to put some money in, not to buy the AC units because the state has a program, but maybe getting volunteers or community health workers engaged in helping with the delivery, setup, or weatherization, or holding weatherization workshops to make sure people who are cool and comfy in either extreme hot or extreme cold weather. So again, just a bit of money to help facilitate those kinds of initiatives or efforts. This is new. You may or may not have noticed our playground is a bit aged. Still good condition, but showing how it's been well loved over its use. So the thought is, let's jumpstart a sinking fund for a playground replacement. 120,000 to kind of jumpstart it. We'll then look at what a replacement would be and then what time we have left to appropriately add in for the future years. But we know we need to do a bit of a catch up, as playgrounds are not inexpensive. And this isn't necessarily what we replace it with, but it looked fun and bright and new and shiny. This one is really cool. So water leak detection, as the council's been well aware over the past year or so, our water loss has gone up to well over 10%, which is something we've been concerned about and trying to track down. Water loss through broken mains is a nationwide issue. And there's been a lot of articles of communities losing well over 50% of their water just in broken pipes. So, there's a company that does satellite-based L-band radar leak detection, and they use alien technology to do a flyover and ground penetrating radar things. And I mean, it's L-band, I don't know what that means. But basically, we've got an agreement with area cities and other water districts to make this more cost effective. If we were to do it on our own, this is about a $40,000 deal. It'd be about a $10,000 deal to still get two pictures of our entire city, looking at where there's groundwater. You overlay that with your GIS water system to look at leak detection. It can do all the way down to 0.2 gallons a minute. So it's looking at that real minuscule amount. Has been very successful. Portland has done it for several years, and other municipals have. And so this company said, hey, we're already going to fly a radar over or a satellite over the area. Cities, other water districts, do you want in on this? The other piece that it would do is then follow up with more traditional leak-based detection systems, where they put stethoscopes on pipes and valves, and I'm sure there's other more high-tech equipment, since Erica's laughing at me. But we could use what we get from the satellite readings, go on the ground and confirm and better pinpoint where these may or may not be and tighten up our system. So really cool technology that is really cost-effective when you think we can get a whole system. Essentially, what leaks do we do not we have for $15,000? That's a great investment. So those are the projects. I'm going to go back to, sorry. this one. And just with a note, whether we're looking at ending fund balances, whether we're looking at what we've got for operating revenues, certainly we can afford these. Even with the sewer, the ask is pretty minuscule, given that we're eating into our fund balance, but we knew that with the big sewer line project, and certainly with the general fund asks, there's still a lot of margin there. So I'm going to pause it on this slide and ask what other questions or concerns people have.
I think they're all good expenditures. I have no questions. I think they're all valid and save us money in the long run.
Else? Comments or questions?
Just comment, these all fall in line with, investment to our community, fire safety, as the mayor mentioned, the contract's up next year, so, we need to figure out a solution. If not, our citizens are gonna be paying way more than what they're receiving. So I think that alone is a huge, again, community investment that the city's looking into.
And many of these were brought up during our council retreat as well. So it isn't, yeah, so. Mayor?
Well, I just to make a comment here. Again, you're hearing staff represent this budget. And certainly what I always look at is ending fund balances. And I keep asking those questions, and I always look to see where that ending fund balance and what's the trend line. And you can feel comfortable with the ending fund balance, and where's that percentage? Yeah, so it's a very comfortable ending fund balance, and there's a lot of cities that don't even come close to that. So it isn't to say that we can go out and spend a bunch of money, because we're going to have cost increases. But you do hear, I hope, that message that we understand there are going to be cost increases. We're planning for them, and we know we have to make adjustments in this. So that would be the only comment I have. And again, just my note here for the fire discussion. So I've said what I wanted to say about the fire.
I have a couple of comments going back to 1982 when I got into Public Works. The American Water Works suggested that you keep at least 1 year of a ending fund balance. So they didn't call it that, but water and sewer, we're nowhere near that in sewer, which is, that's really hard. And that's probably the one that you need to keep the most in. That being water. And I see that when we talk very freely of, which is a good thing, like our SCADA system. And then we talk about that we need those funds for water breaks. And if we needed to replace a long section of pipe, we would always have that money that we could, call us back in for a budget increase to change our budget to do something like that, should there be an earthquake or something like that. Or we have a well go out, which would cost a lot of money. We have the money to be able to support the things that we have and not to go out for a grant, we've discussed that before, that they just don't give out grants for water and sewer. And so that's my comment there. The only other comment that I had was with the park playground equipment. I was thinking when I was taking our granddaughters out here to play in them, that how old this park equipment is. I was wondering if Greg had played on this stuff out here when he was a kid. That was the case. And so I'm glad that we're thinking about
Not
replacing
just
it.
limited to when I was a kid.
Hey, I remember that playground equipment when we moved here 30-some years ago. It was
Was that the
nothing like
same
that. Oh, no.
No.
When we got here was actually, we used an old sewer pipe.
Old sewer
It
pipe?
was most used playground piece of equipment too, because you could climb on it, over it, in it. It was
It was right out of the 50s and 60s, Mark.
Oh,
So, yeah.
From the original sewer plant.
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've gone a long, long ways in our playground, believe me.
Let's go back to a little retro. Get those sewer pipes out again. Go old school.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so if there isn't any more comments, how about our,
Maria, any
Victoria.
comments, questions?
Victoria?
Nope, no more questions or comments.
No comments? Okay. All right, thank you for sticking with us. Okay, so then our next item on the agenda is action on approved budget proposals, right?
Correct. We have the motions here. The one thing I do want to point out, this first one does just authorize a levy of our tax rate there. The next one is the actual council adoption of the budget. If you want to add in those discretionary items, just make sure you add that to the motion, saying inclusive of the discretionary items, but it does exclude East County Recreation Services, so we avoid that conflict of interest. Then there's one more that Council President Rios Campos couldn't vote on that adds that into the budget. So that way, Council President can vote on the entirety of the budget exclusive of Play East. Then the third one adds it back in. If people aren't comfortable adopting tonight, there is then the fourth one is an alternative one to extend the hearing.
I think we're good. So.
Yeah.
Who's confused? Pat,
Yeah. Which is which here?
you can take it right off the screen.
No, never mind.
Okay.
You know, I'm old.
No, that's okay. Want to do the first one, Pat?
It's number 3, right?
No, the very top.
The very top one.
Okay.
We'll start at the top, work your way down.
All right. I move to authorize the property tax levy of the permanent tax rate for the city of Wood Village in the amount of 3.1262 per thousand of assessed value.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Motion on the next item. And you're going to abstain, right?
No, this one he can vote on
Oh, you can vote.
including the recreation services. But if you want to add in those discretion items, just add that to the
Yes.
motion.
All right.
I'll give it a try.
Okay.
I move to recommend the city council adoption of the 2024-25 budget excluding recreation services as amended by the budget committee and adding in the discretionary funding.
Got a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Pat. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to recommend the city council adoption of the 2024-25 budget for recreation services as amended by the budget committee.
Does he have to add?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we've had a motion and a what?
I can abstain.
No, he second.
He second.
Yes.
We had a second.
We've had a
So then what
motion.
we need to let the council president do is abstaining a vote.
I will abstain from this vote.
Okay. So we've had a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We had an abstention and motion passes.
And
Whew.
that is it.
Hey,
That's it. Wait, what? That is long that you made a motion. You forgot.
Yes.
Hey, I forgot to buy a card. I got a days,
Thank you all very much for your time this evening. And Victoria, you are free to sign off because we're going to sign off here. And thank you all again. Us as your staff.
Oh,
Thank you.
you do good work, Greg. And
Yes,
don't
we
forget to
do.
wait.